Hey, Montel Williams here. Look, I've got some incredible news to share with you. I want to tell you about my brand new book that's coming out that's called The Sailing of the Intrepid. Now, this book is more than just an historical account. It's a tribute to the brave men who served aboard the USS Intrepid and a celebration of their extraordinary legacy. Writing this book was such an incredible story, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share it with you. So don't wait to grab your little piece of history. The book is available right now to order. You can go to montelmedia.com, and you can even get a limited autograph signed copy. Now, thank you so much for your support. I can't wait for you to read this incredible story of the sailing of the Intrepid. I'll see you on the pages. Welcome back to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, the show where we explore cutting-edge realms of wellness, plant medicine, and innovative minds, shaping the future of healthcare. I'm your host, Montel Williams, and today we have a truly exciting guest who's blending science, strategy, and a big dose of human compassion to revolutionize both natural medicine and integrative healthcare. Join us is Stephanie Karzon Abrams, a neuropharmacologist, innovator, and founder of Beyond Consulting. Stephanie is guiding clinics, companies, and communities into a future where science and plant-based medicine intersect to change lives. She's not just pushing boundaries, she's completely redefining them. Stephanie, welcome to Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Montel.
Absolutely. Look, before we jump into everything we've been working on, and you're going to give us a big dose of new reality, can you share a little bit about your background, where you're from, where you went to school, what got you into plant-based medicine?
Sure. Well, I'm born and raised in Montreal, Canada, and now I'm in Southern California. Like you mentioned, I'm a clinical neuropharmacologist by training, but I'm also creative, and I love bridging these worlds. Over the years, I've stepped into roles that let me bridge science with spirit, and I work with plant medicines and psychedelic companies to build safer, smarter systems, from research and clinical protocols to operations and education. And my work is all about building these bridges, healing and promoting access. But at the heart, it comes from a personal place. I started in the ICU working with patients who had traumatic brain injuries. I saw how brain trauma didn't just affect memory and motor skill, it changed people, it dimmed their light. So I became invested in finding therapies that could bring people back to themselves. And that's what led me to psychedelics and integrative care, into plant medicine as well. And like many people, I've had my own deep and personal experiences that were enlightening and inspiring. And I've learned that these therapies don't just manage symptoms, they restore connection, purpose, and joy. And I love talking about joy. But my mission overall is to help make these medicines available safely and responsibly. And I'm not only invested in the space of neurology, but also bettering women's health and even the intersection of both these spaces. I spent, almost 6 years in corporate healthcare, and in 2022, kind of left that space and went off on my own to create Beyond Consulting.
I mean, it's an incredible evolution, and you're working now. How do you work just as a consultant? And again, is your company just consulting, or what do you talk to me a little bit? Tell me about your firm, Beyond Consulting, and the
Yeah,
group
sure,
of
sure,
work.
sure. Yeah, so it is a consulting firm. We have a variety of offerings, and that's what I do mainly. But I also provide a lot of education to people all over. I do a lot of advocacy and policy work, and I do a lot of research. So I feel that research, that data is what's going to move the needle on the legislative and policy side. So I'm very invested there. And in our little bubble of psychedelics and plant medicine, everybody is so well informed, but you step out of that bubble in the mainstream healthcare system, and you don't just have, patients who are lacking the information and the education, but you have healthcare providers who are lacking the information and the education, because our system, has our healthcare providers really, really, pigeonholed, and they don't have the time and the bandwidth to be exploring all of these innovative fields. And so I find that within my consulting firm, not only can I help healthcare providers directly launch their clinics, their centers, Founders and operators of retreat centers establish ethical and holistic integrative medicine, plant medicine retreats, but also plant medicine brands, botanical brands, leveraging research to, get their consumers to trust and be educated. This is really important because we're in a saturated market where there's CBD, THC, functional mushrooms, adaptogenic plants. How do people know, what is good, what is not good, what is, a good product, what is not a good product? Does it work? What are the side effects? And so we're not a marketing agency. We're going to leverage real data through research to be able to build that trust and provide education.
At a time where the federal government is crushing research all over the country, and organizations haven't been funding research. Where are you getting the funding to get some of this research done?
So I guess there's two ways to answer this question. So if a botanical company commissions or hires us to do what I call decentralized research, the company itself has to have the funds. And so my advice to these botanical brands is to ensure that they are clarifying with their investors that research is important to them, that not only do they want to do, research studies to prove efficacy and safety, but they want to build almost like a research program within their company. And so that way they can allocate funds from their investors. And you don't have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to do research. You can do decentralized research studies for as low as $10,000. And we're talking about really simple, robust research surveys. And that's like the lowest hanging fruit, and it could be extremely impactful. So that's my number one piece of advice to these brands. And then when I work with my fellow researchers, you have to raise private funds, and so we try to go for areas of research that are lacking. We try to identify populations that are underserved, and we make a case for these populations. We create pilot studies to demonstrate that there's a need. I'm going to give you an example. A couple of years ago, I published a harm reduction article about spinal cord injury. And what we found, our team, we found that on Reddit, there were all of these people that were sharing about their experience with plant medicine. So they were self-medicating for a variety of reasons. But there were so many people that it was so compelling. We said, there's something going on here. People with spinal cord injury are self-medicating because they have a spinal cord injury, they've experienced trauma, and they're trying to heal that trauma. But they're also trying to figure out how they might be able to regain their motor skills. So there was that piece. The other piece is that there were all of these adverse events and side effects that could be potentially very, very dangerous to this community. So that raised a flag that was very important to us, because it's, even though psychedelics are regulated and they're not, completely legally accessible, people are getting their hands on psychedelics right now, right? And so clearly this population is out there self-experimenting. So we published this paper where we were outlining an unmet need, right? And SCI, spinal cord injury, is something that there is no cure for, right? But there are programs like at the University of Miami that are trying to raise funds so that they can research for a cure. So we partnered with the Miami project, Cure for Paralysis, and we published this paper, one for harm reduction, two to essentially shed the light that here's an area that could really be served by psychedelic therapies. But three, we have to figure out how we can work with them because there are adverse events. So this is like a really great way to look at research and think about how you might get subsequent research funded, is identifying an area that is unmet, a need that is unmet, a population that is underserved, and creating like this jumping off point with a pilot study.
Well, now, I mean, how is Beyond Consulting doing this in the real world, in the sense of trying to let these patients know? You said it yourself. You got to pay an entire community that's out here, not the entire community, but a percentage of the community out here that is literally self-medicating, literally just taking shots on goal, trying to see if they can get through. And some of them are doing things that are deleterious to their own health. So how do you get information to the masses to let them know, I mean, do you share anecdotal information? Share, if you can, share me an anecdotal story about how psychedelics has helped one person and how it may not have helped another person, so that people who are listening can understand, no, you don't walk away from this conversation believing that psychedelics are going to change your world. This is what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, so anecdotal evidence is very powerful. Storytelling is very powerful, and so I think one thing that we need to prioritize is something that we call citizen science. There are a lot of people out there that are, gathering a lot of information, not just in the Western world, but they're going out into the jungle where people are practicing with plant medicines like ayahuasca, and they're gathering information. And then we need to rely on other storytellers. We have to rely on the media. And what's amazing is that there are these groups that have come through in the media, with newsletters that have thousands and thousands of subscribers. We have podcasts like yours, and I've made it my mission to write a lot of science communication, and get these articles out there, to get this information out there. I consistently do podcasts like these ones so that I can share this information, not only just share about Beyond Consulting, but share success stories. And I think that the power of storytelling just needs to be leveraged more and more. Documentaries, we have a responsibility to dispel, myths and promote, responsible, robust information and education. I
How
think
about, how
that,
about how about dispel a couple of myths right now, if you can? I mean, because again, right now, as I listen to you, I listen and it sounds exciting that there might be possibilities. And then, somebody who's listening to this podcast may say, well, shoot, she said there may be a possibility if I use this or that, you didn't say this, but they're going to take it away. You know what I mean? People seem to filter information the way they want to filter it. And so let's talk a little bit about some people who may have made a couple mistakes thinking that, okay, I have a spinal cord injury, so if I go use ayahuasca, it's going to be healed tomorrow. It's not going to be healed tomorrow.
Right. I love that you asked this question, because that was actually a huge, huge thing that we noticed. A lot of people on these Reddit threads were talking about how they were taking psychedelics, and they were experiencing spasticity. So they were able, because of this spasticity, they were able to stand. Now, if you have a spinal cord injury, you're hoping that this might mean that you're regrowing some nerves, that you're making neural connections, and you might be able to walk again. If you have an incomplete spinal cord injury, recovery or partial recovery is possible. If you have a complete severance of your spinal cord in that injury, chances are you will not be able to walk again. And I'm not here to crush spirits or crush hope, but it's important to be realistic. What's happening when people with spinal cord injury take that psychedelic, that serotonergic psychedelic, I have to specify. So that's a classic psychedelic like LSD, like psilocybin, like mescaline. It creates this spasticity and tremors and some other adverse reactions, but that's the spasticity that's allowing people to stand, right? And so I want to make sure, and that's what we did with our paper, we want to make sure that people realize that this is not a product of new neurons growing back or your ability to now walk because the mushrooms are allowing you to walk again. This is the spasticity. I will say, however, that the field of what we might call psychedelic assisted rehabilitation or physical therapy is something that is being studied for people with incomplete spinal cord injuries, people who have experienced stroke or severe injury. And yes, there we're seeing, because of that neuroplasticity, because of the reduction in inflammation, and the reduction of perception of pain, people are able to rehabilitate an injury faster. So that is a very fascinating and evolving field. But, to your point, I want to make sure that people realize that eating a bunch of mushrooms is not going to magically restore your ability to walk again if you have a complete spinal cord injury.
And where can people go if they want to get more information about or investigatory information to let themselves know whether or not they could be a candidate for some form of treatment like this?
Yeah, I think speak to your neurologist. Not every neurologist is going to be an expert,
So
about psychedelics.
I was just going to jump in and say, yeah, speak to your neurologist. I got neurologists who still say, no, cannabis doesn't help at all in anything. And these are people who don't even, do the studies. And we know now that there are universities around the country, from Harvard to and unfortunately Harvard's been in the press, but
Yeah.
Harvard to
Yeah. Well,
Washington.
I'll mention the neurologist that I collaborate with, who is an expert in cannabis medicine and psychedelic medicine, and his name is Dr. Evan Lewis. So you can find him online, Dr. Evan Lewis. He's based in Toronto, but he does, do appointments with the U.S. The Miami Project Cure for Paralysis is an affiliated department with the University of Miami, and you can always certainly send me an email, and I'm sure you'll have my contact information in the show
Go
notes.
ahead and give it
And I'm
out. Go
happy.
ahead and give it out right now. That way, people listen.
You can go you
Sorry.
can go to my website, which is beyondconsulting.life, and just click the contact form and you can send me an email through there.
And how is Beyond Consulting elevating product safety and efficacy in this space? I mean, that's a little bit different. One thing is researching what it does, but now we have to research the safety of it. I mean, I look
Yeah,
at there's all kinds of products in the marketplace, all kinds of products. You can
you're
buy
so right.
any version of anything you want that's been poorly manufactured, poorly extracted, to things that are almost pharmaceutical grade. You can find all that, and because they're not capable of marketing or advertising or even discussing, people have to kind of, it's literally almost hit or miss. I mean, you just sprinkle the salt on the table and try to figure out which grain works. You know,
Yep.
so I mean, how are you trying to raise the bar when it comes to product safety?
You're so right. The natural product space is booming right now, but so is consumer skepticism. So people want plant-based solutions, but they also want proof. They're asking if it's safe, is it effective, is it hype? So we're in a saturated market, and I believe that what sets a brand apart isn't just the product, it's going to be the evidence. It's going to be the effort that that brand makes to also put out education and information. So what we do is we're going to help brands back up their claims with science. As I mentioned earlier, we're not a marketing agency. So when we're asked to design research studies, research programs, or do scientific advisory, it's all rooted in real data and integrity. We want to believe in the company that we're working with. We're not just going to, partner with a company because they sign a nice check, over to us. So marketing might get you the shelf space, but I think that evidence is what's going to get you the longevity in this market. So what we'll do is we'll design small scale, real world research studies that can demonstrate not only efficacy, but also safety, tolerability, and consumer experience. And we partner with a software platform called People Science. They have a platform that's called Chloe. And within Chloe, you can run a full study, whether it's a small research survey to a full blown clinical trial. It's HIPAA compliant. It stores all the data on the cloud. It has all of these incredible features that allows us to decentralize studies. And what that means is a lot of brands think that they have to partner with an academic research center, a university, but that's not true. You don't have to. You can utilize a platform like Chloe. You can partner with Beyond Consulting, and you can do this research. And we will do it in the cannabis space. We will do it in the psychedelic space, and we'll do it in the plants, herbs, botanical space. All the things that are legally available as well.
Tell
So
me a
that's
little
what we
bit.
do.
Tell me a little bit as an example of the case study that you did with Ka
Yeah,
a natural canna supplement. What did that
yeah.
collaboration teach you, and what did you learn about it? And talk a little bit about the collaboration itself.
Sure, sure. So Ka Empathogenics is a Kana supplement company. So for those who don't know, Kana is a South African plant. It has a beautiful, beautiful, rich history with the Khoisan people and in the tribe. So men who would go out hunting for days would take it to calm their anxiety, but also to appease their appetite. Mothers, postpartum would take it to help stabilize their mood. It's safe and non-addictive or neurotoxic. So it's even safe enough to give to a baby experiencing colic or discomfort from teething. It's a very beautifully supportive supplement. And it kind of works like an SSRI, right? It'll inhibit the reuptake of serotonin, which will allow for mood balancing. Creates kind of like this beautiful neurochemical jazz, as I like to say it, in the mind, right? It can help balance you, calm you, but it could also help energize you. And so, Ka does these 30-day journeys into the heart. So they create community. And they offer this 30-day journey where people get to experience their supplement. And they wanted to do more than, just customer satisfaction. So they came to us to design a research survey that would look very, very deeply at the improvements that people experienced on their quality of life. So we surveyed them pre and we surveyed them post, and we used scales that are validated scales in research that are measurable so that we could really have a comparison of before and after and be really certain that, the evidence that we collected was robust and we could trust the results. People, I'm going to give you some highlights. People found an improvement in their quality of life simply by having the ritual of taking Kana on a daily basis. People felt more socially and energetically available to go make new friends and go out into the world and connect with people. People used it also as an alcohol replacement. And I'd love to talk more about that because not only is research showing us that alcohol is unhealthy, but when we use alcohol socially, we are becoming more disconnected from ourselves and from others. And here's a way to maybe experience, a more extroverted way of being, call it a social lubricant, while remaining grounded and connected with ourselves and the people
Are you saying
around
that
us.
Ka has a euphoric kind of effect? Is that what you're saying? Because I mean, I've
It
not.
can, especially in the higher doses.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, I mean, is legal? Is it legal?
It's completely legal. It's completely legal. People even found that it helped boost their mood if they were feeling like they had symptoms of depression or just low mood, low motivation. Ka was able to elevate them on that level. You can consume it in a tincture form. You can consume it in a chew. Other companies also make a pure Kana extract in a powder that you can take sublingually, and you feel the effects immediately.
Is that here available in the United States? I've never seen it on shelves.
It is. It is. Most of the sales, I think, are online. I have actually never seen it sold in a herb or botanical store, but I'm certain you can find it. But most sales are online, and it is completely legal.
That's crazy because I mean, if you go to New York, you can get mushrooms in a bodega. You can get, what they
Yep.
claim is psilocybin in bodegas. It's really kind of crazy. And there's been so much buzz lately about psychedelics like psilocybin, MDMA, and their potential to revolutionize healthcare. I've sat and had conversations with lots of people who have talked about how it's literally changed their lives, especially those who have suffered some sort of a addictive issue with other substances. How some of the psychedelics have actually helped them, have become an exit drug for them from their use of opioids. So, I mean, if you could, as someone working directly with these treatments in Canada under a special access program, I mean,
Mm.
what's new in this kind of plant medicine, this plant medicine research?
It's a good question. There are new things coming out every day. I think something that could be really interesting to highlight is ibogaine.
Yes.
So the iboga plant that hails from Gabon in West Africa. It's a bark. They kind of mull it down to a powder.
Let's remember for those people who are just tuning in, ibogaine was used 300-400 years ago as a poison, right?
Mm.
So people have to understand that these are some of the things that we're talking about. I'm not talking about these things so you can run out tomorrow, run down the street, and try to pick them up from bury down the corner. No, do your research. This is not something that you want to get from somebody who created this in their bathtub. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I had to say that.
No, I'm glad you said that. It's important too, especially for ibogaine and some of these that have higher risk profiles, especially like ibogaine, because this is not a walk in the park. I take a microdose and I go. I mean, people do experience it in smaller doses, but this isn't like let's take some mushrooms with friends and lay on the grass and contemplate our lives. This is a deep, 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 deep journey, and ibogaine is being leveraged for addiction and traumatic brain injury. And this is important for me because that's where I got started. I got started in the ICU, working with traumatic brain injury patients. And when I saw the research out of Stanford last year,
And what did
I
that and what
was,
did that research say? Does that research say that it's
yeah,
going to recruit, brain cells or the brain
it was,
cells? It helps
it
the
was
brain plasticity. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, a little bit of everything here. So, a small group, I think it was 30 veterans that had a mild traumatic brain injury. They all went to Mexico to a center to experience Ibogaine. And it is the first study that showed a significant reduction in the symptoms related to TBI. So that's brain fog, that's insomnia, chronic headache, depression, anxiety, the PTSD that they experienced from, these veterans, they got their traumatic brain injuries from being out at war and experiencing these injuries. So there's trauma. And so this is the first time that we're not just mitigating and putting band-aids on these symptoms. There is an increase of neuroplasticity. There is this healing, this ability to go and address the trauma and actually heal it. And it doesn't mean that overnight, you're a brand new person and the work is done. This is deep work that needs to probably continue over a lifetime. But for the first time, these veterans were reconnected with themselves. They had lost themselves in their injury. They were, living under this veil of their symptoms. It affects your quality of life on so many levels. It affects the person that you are and how you see yourself. So, yes, the symptom relief is huge, but they were able to find a more curative solution, and nothing has shown potential like Ibogaine for traumatic brain injury. And the same for addiction. It works on the opiate receptors. It creates this reset where you're hearing stories of people go to these centers with long-standing substance use disorders and come back, 2 weeks later, completely changed and healed, or at least on a path to true healing.
But again,
So I really,
this works this way when you are doing this under supervision of somebody who's a clinician
absolutely.
who can do this. This is not something that you run out. Do not go down the corner and ask Billy. Billy doesn't know what he's talking about. Stop. You need to go to a really good clinic, a place that is professional, that recognizes and been using these products for a while if you're going to try to experiment with this. I just have to overemphasize that because unfortunately, somebody's going to tune into 5 minutes of this and go, "I heard Ibogaine's the best thing in the world."
Right.
Okay. And no, do not do
No.
this on your own, right?
Yeah, I appreciate you shouting out the safety and the responsibility. And in order to do more of that, we need policy to catch up. I mean, it's the same in cannabis. We have veterans using cannabis to sleep and to survive. Really, we've got cancer patients that are using chemo with cannabis, but yet policy will still pretend that it has no medical value. And I think that disconnect is dangerous.
And that's also a disconnect of generations. I'm going to say I'm so sorry. I think it's the existing generation that's out here right now that's in charge. Just has this misconception of because they were too busy believing the trash that they were told when it comes to cannabis that they can't let go their stereotype. And I mean, what do you think it's going to take for people to start understanding that plant medicine has an application in this world, especially in healthcare?
It's just going to take more of what we're doing already. It really is. We need to keep telling stories like this, anecdotal evidence. I keep saying it's so important. It's just as important as the actual research that comes out of these major universities, because it's from the anecdotes that people become, enlightened or aware of an issue. It's like I said with the spinal cord injury. We were on Reddit and we saw this whole community, and we were like, okay, we got to research this. So tell your story, and it's not helpful that, I don't know if you're aware of this, but currently there have been these massive takedowns of social media accounts,
Oh yeah.
not just social media accounts that are just promoting education, not even just psychedelic ones, even plant medicines that are completely legal.
Oh,
There's just been a massive sweep.
without a doubt, every now and then we get bumped for something that somebody says on the show, and I do not understand. But part of that has more to do with the fact that there's big pharma out there afraid of losing an opportunity to
Absolutely.
make more money off of those who are ill rather than try to cure those who are ill. I will say that directly. Now that I just said that, I'm probably going to get jammed. However, I mean, the truth of the matter is that we see pushback from the mainstream, or call it mainstream pharmaceutical industry across the country, they're afraid of this stuff.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Do you think the psychedelic therapy will soon become accessible on a larger scale? And what needs to happen to make that happen? Now, you just said some things about more people sharing their stories, but we have to have outlets to share them in.
Yeah. 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 Research has been blocked and underfunded. You talked about that early. So we've had to rely on patient stories, on underground use, on real world outcomes to guide the innovation. So again, the anecdotes aren't just stories, they're often the first signal that something works. I will say, a really interesting entry point to psychedelic therapy has been ketamine. And ketamine has this like very polarizing reputation, right? There's a lot of misinformation. There's also the fact that ketamine is used in recreational settings like parties and raves, and we see people, completely like disassociate from themselves, and so there's a lot of misuse and abuse. However, ketamine is a drug that we really understand. It's been used for years as an anesthetic in the ER. It's fast acting, it's short acting, so that means it's in and out relatively quickly, and it's safe in the sense that we understand how it works. When we understand how something works, when we understand when to use it, when not to use it, that's when we can really, say that something is safe. Saying something is safe doesn't mean that it's necessarily for everyone. It's more so, in my opinion, that we understand its use case. And ketamine has shown so much evidence around the symptom relief of depression. People who have been suffering from treatment resistant depression for years receive one dose and they can feel like they can breathe again. They feel like they can sense themselves again. And now it's not just one dose and poof, you're done. Now begins the deep work. If you can have that major relief after that one treatment, you are now opened up to more treatments, but you are opened up to the therapy. And that's why it's psychedelic assisted therapy. We're not trying to replace our current pharmaceuticals with new psychedelic pharmaceuticals. That's not the point here. The point is to pair them with therapy, with facilitation, and with this deep work. And ketamine is accessible in two ways: FDA approved and off label. And people are experiencing relief not just with their depression, but eating disorders, OCD, PTSD, anxiety. A lot of therapists and providers are working very deeply to understand what methods of therapies work best hand in hand with ketamine. And so ketamine is a dissociative drug. It creates this out of body type experience that allows the person to feel a relief from the emotional burden that they associate to their current challenges or to their past trauma. So it allows them to have almost this like objective bird's eye view lens, but it also creates a window of plasticity that allows for emotional resilience to happen and that deep work to happen. And it also increases this neurotransmitter called glutamate, which has been linked to symptoms of depression when glutamate is low. And so people are now expanding its use cases to women's health. So talking about what needs to be done to like move the needle forward, I think a huge thing that we can do is focus on the tools that we actually have legally available right now. And because ketamine does create this psychedelic experience and is helping thousands of people right now in the here and now manage their mental health, it's supportive of their mental health, we should look at what we can do now. And once we can do that, we can expand to the other medicines. And of course, people are doing, research in tandem, and creating programs to allow for veterans to go experience plant medicine in other countries, to experience clinical trials here in the US. You mentioned the SAP program in Canada. There's so many efforts that are happening in tandem, but I think we also need to remind ourselves that there's things we can do in the here and now that are going to help us in the future create access to these other medicines.
Yeah, you're a huge advocate for integrative medicine. Why do you think incorporating traditional science and plant-based medicine and holistic approaches all together is key to a better health outcomes? And I will tell you that I can testify to that without a doubt, because I literally, for the last, 20 plus years, have taken an integrative approach to my own journey with MS, and I had a stroke. So I've taken my own journey through that, understanding that, yes, there are certain Western medications that work, but there are also opportunities here to bring in, I believe, you don't go to war against an issue or against another, an enemy. And if enemy is disease, you don't go to war with one tank. You go to war with tanks, ships, airplanes, bazookas, and you list the whole, your quiver needs to be filled with as much as you can to take down the enemy. And that's, to me, what integrative medicine is all about, is making sure that, we have as many different options available at the same time. Not that I'm over medicating, but I'm trying to attack this beast at every level of its symptom.
Absolutely. I like that analogy. And I love when you said the quiver, because yeah, I see it as it's a bag of tools that we have. And sometimes it's going to be our nutrition. Sometimes it's going to be our mental health. Sometimes it's going to be a pharmaceutical agent, or it's going to be supplementation. But the point here is that we're looking at the full person. The mind and the body are not two different, disconnected pieces. They're one and the same. There's a channel of communication that's always going between the body and the mind. And psychedelic and plant medicines are integrative medicines. They're body, mind, and spirit medicine. And when I say spirit, I'm talking about the existential piece to medicine, right? And that's really important not to overlook. I'm a huge advocate of integrative medicine because I think that's how we experience and access true healing. Healing is not just going to happen in the four walls of the hospital and the four walls of the clinic. It's got to happen at home. And we have to have physicians that are educating our patients about what they can do when they step outside the clinic or the hospital. Your food, your supplementation, your sleep, movement, exercise, all of it all feeds into our vessel.
It's so,
And
it doesn't not disturb you. I mean to cut you off, but doesn't that disturb you when you run across doctors who say, "Oh, that's all psycho bullshit." Excuse me, and that's all whatever. No, we really did focus on X, Y, Z. And I feel like, if you're a doctor, who made you God? You know what I mean? So where if you were God, none of us would be sick. So therefore, to look outside the bag of tools that they gave you at your little silly little university seems to be something that you should literally be trying to do. And unfortunately,
yeah.
as we look at universities right now, they're running for these guys are all running for the hills because they're afraid if I do something wrong, Donald Trump's going to come after me. You know what I mean? So now we got to deal with this for the next 5 to 10 years because he's now rolled the bowling ball down the aisle and he's trying to knock down all the pins. Only the pins will stay up that I think he or his cronies are making a little money off of. All the other pins are going to fall down. Your work clearly focuses on innovation and new groundbreaking ways for healthcare. What's on the horizon for you and, beyond consulting? How do you see this field evolving over the next couple of years?
Two things I think that I see on the horizon. So I recently returned from Europe, and Europe is not where we are at when it comes to these topics. Do they know about psychedelics and plant medicine? Yes, by name. And are there communities, scattered across Europe that are well informed? Absolutely. You've got the Imperial College of London in the UK, very, very forward thinking with this type of research. But then you've got other cities, other countries that are very, very behind. So I'm actually going to just, say it right now. I would love for us to extend our services into Europe and bring the knowledge that we have here to go create more education in Europe. There's a lot of misinformation, even with legal medicines that are available here stateside, again, like ketamine. You say that in certain countries in Europe, and there are only negative associations, or there's just an absolute gap in knowledge. So I think I have an opportunity with Beyond Consulting to bring the education there, to bring our services there, to really sing the praises of an integrative approach to healthcare. And that can include psychedelic and plant medicines. And then in terms,
I've spoken to some people from around the world, especially in Europe, and they seem to be reticent, for anything.
yeah,
you can barely seem to get, first off, you got to be careful if you take CBD into certain places. If you take,
yeah,
and that's as bad as it is here in the United States. I'm sure I think you heard about what happened in Texas, where they're trying to ban any form of cannabis uh,
I saw that.
all across the board. Everything from because there's some doctor down there who doesn't understand that non-psychotropic cannabinoids are just another component of a plant that, just like vitamin C, it's not detrimental to your health. Some of these diehards you can't seem to convince. So, I mean, have you been invited to come do panels in Europe or what?
Working on it. I did one in Spain last month. It was
Mhm.
very, very well received. We need people who are going to put themselves out there to curate the spaces, because even if there are a lot of skeptics and naysayers, there are people who are interested. There are people who want the education, and that's where you have to start. Even if the room has 5 people in it, I don't care. I'll go speak to those 5 people. I've really made it my mission, to spread that information where perhaps it's not even wanted at first, but that's the opportunity. It starts with the people. It starts with culture. It starts with society. It starts with a conversation like we're having right now. Thousands of people might tune in and listen to this conversation. We might inspire a few, and that has a ripple effect.
And how do you see advancements in AI shaping the way healthcare providers analyze this kind of data? I mean, because AI, I think, could probably be very useful in analyzing when you were talking about, making sure we call as many of the anecdotes as we can so that we can look at them. I mean, I would think that the number of people that are out here are quite, look, we're selling more cannabis right now in America than we're selling milk. We're selling more cannabis
Yeah,
than we are right now than we're selling any energy drink. We're selling more cannabis than we're selling right
incredible.
now than even alcohol. We know it. It's pissed off the alcohol industry. We're selling way more cannabis than we're selling cigarettes. So that means that there's a lot of damn data out there. And that data could be culled and utilized if we, utilize the tools of AI to go through it, take a look at it, and give us categories where we really need to focus in to investigate. What do you think AI is going to do?
Yeah, so I'm actually interested in two areas when it comes to, I guess, like AI and AI powered personalization. So as I mentioned earlier, my firm helps design and launch these clinics and centers, and so I'm deeply invested in the patient experience. So machine learning and AI are beginning to power personalized dosing protocols, not just in psychedelics like psilocybin therapy, but also in the field of ketamine assisted therapy, microdosing therapies. They're using it for matching dose, frequency, um, and user feedback as well. So I'm very interested in using AI to power this type of personalization because this work is very personalized work. It's not really like your typical, pharmaceuticals where it says take 2 of these twice a day. It's going to be deeply personal. It's got to be customized. And that's why it takes so much time invested in skill and expertise and time with your patients to really understand them. And I think that AI can really provide a lot of support on that level to essentially adapt the experience and the protocols to the individual.
Yeah,
But we're
with so many hospitals and so many medical what do you call them conglomerates forcing their doctors to spend less and less time with their patients, it seems like it's
absolutely.
almost an oxymoron. Personalized medicine. You walk in the door, you're going to get the exact same thing the guy got before you. Fill out this form, in and out. Goodbye. Next. Let me look at your tongue. Goodbye. Next. You know what I mean? How do we make people understand that what's new isn't necessarily what's best. What's probably old was best when doctors actually spent time with their patient, got to know their patient, got to listen to
Yeah.
their patient, got to understand the fact that all sizes don't fit all.
Absolutely. I know, but this is like a systemic issue. The systems have essentially created these 15-minute appointments with your physician. You're in and out. That's all they got. And so we can naysay the docs and say that they're not looking at the full person, they're not doing this right, they're not doing that right. But like the system has created this environment where like they have to see 50 people in under 3 hours and they're doing the best that they can. So I empathize with them quite a bit, but it's the same doctors that are going to have the power to ask for better, just a better system, for better care. It starts with the individual. And if our physicians aren't asking for better, then it's just not going to happen. So
And they're
I'd
not
love
listening.
to.
They're not listening to the communities, because I would believe that the community has just as important a
Oh,
role
for
in this,
sure.
in demanding that the doctors give you more time, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it also goes to the payers and the insurance. Right now people are fighting tooth and nail to get insurance approval for certain medicines. Like even for ketamine, you have Johnson and Johnson that has capitalized on ketamine and created intranasal Spravato that is FDA approved and reimbursed by insurance. But what about the injectable ketamine? Why is there no coverage there? So we're seeing, these issues get propagated. And I feel that every time we take a step forward, we're taking two steps back. But I think we must not get discouraged, and really try to go for the root issue, which are these systems, these policies, and the insurance payers.
Well, for the average person who's listening right now and maybe curious about plant-based medicine or psychedelics, what steps can they take to begin exploring these options in a safe and responsible way?
There are some platforms that I've come to know that create really amazing and reliable content. I'm going to shout out two right now. Thirdwave.co. That's a colleague of mine, Paul Austin. There's so much information on that website. You can browse per psychedelic. There's, safety indications and guidelines and just researched and cited referenced information. There is a nonprofit based here in California called the Microdosing Collective, and they're all about harm reduction, policy reform, and education, because the world is microdosing. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's legal or not. People are doing it. And if you're going to do it safely. So the Microdosing Collective also has a research program. I actually lead the research program. And there are so many studies there. So that's just two examples. But the advice here is to take the time to do your research. If you're going to try any of these plant medicines, start low and slow. If you take medication or you have any illnesses, there are medical professionals that could advise you. There is information that you can find out there that might point to maybe this plant medicine is not for you if you're taking XYZ medicine, right? And so do the research and don't let it feel so daunting. Create a relationship with this new ritual and exploration. I think that it could lead to something, really, really beautiful and expansive. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Even if your doctor you think is very square, ask the questions. The more we ask from our doctors and our pharmacists, the more it sets off this, this light bulb, like, okay, people want to know. Maybe I should go read about it. Maybe I should go do some research.
Sure. Well, Stephanie, your work is
Yeah.
really, truly inspiring. It's also paving the way for new possibilities in healthcare that feel both groundbreaking and deeply personal. So before we wrap up, one more time, tell people where they can go to learn more about your work, what you're involved in, and maybe even reach out to your team or reach out if they want to invest in research. Give us all your stats.
Yeah. Beyondconsulting.life. Tons of links and information, blogs, contact form. My Instagram, I post a lot of content there. It's Steph with a PH, 2 underscores, and the letter K. Those two places are a great place to start. So I hope I see you on there, and don't hesitate to reach out with questions.
Well, I tell you, this hour flew by so quickly. It's crazy. I'd love to have you back. So at some point in time, we'll reach out again, and hopefully we won't have any technical issues like we did at the beginning of this one. But I'd love to have you back if that's okay.
I would love that. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your passion, your vision for a better, more integrative future of healthcare and health and wellness. And for all of you out there who've been tuned in and listening, make sure you tune into the next episode of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments. Military Makeover is so grateful for the support of Purple Heart Homes, a nonprofit organization that rebuilds and transforms the homes for our veterans.
Our heroes come home with sacrifices most of us can't imagine. As a veteran myself, I've been there and founded Purple Heart Homes to help.
When I tell the story of Purple Heart Homes, it's the freedom to not have to depend on somebody else to do the simple everyday things in life.
Visit phhusa.org/makeover to learn how you can help.